I'm Sarah and today's cast on day. This morning my daughter and I, we did our casting on, and these are Audrey's, my daughter's stitches. She's going to be using Magic Loop method, which I'll show you shortly. And so she's cast on everything she needs for her vanilla mitts that she's making. So it's just the plain stocking stitch mitts. And she is using, mine's Ground Control, but this is the Ziggy Wool Kitchen yarn. But anyway, I'll move on to that shortly. This is what I'm going to look at now, which is the double pointed needles. So these are my double pointed needles, and you can choose whether to work on work with 4 needles or 5. It's up to you, and I'll show you what I mean shortly. So here you go, I've got my stitches all cast onto one of the double pointed needles. Now I need to divide them evenly over either 3 more needles and use this as my working needle, the 5th, or I use 2 more needles to divide it on. So I have 3 needles that I've got the stitches on, and I use the 4th as my working needle. I like using it like this, so I like to use 3 needles to put my stitches on and 1 to work with. So I'm going to divide this roughly evenly between the 3. So I just pick up those stitches, use the sharper end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right, see, I've got all my stitches now spread between those 3 needles. So I make sure that the bases of all the stitches are in the center, making a nice loop. I don't want anything twisted. I don't want it twisted like that. I want to make sure that when I flatten those out, I've got a lovely plait that works between these, so there's no twisting going on. Now I hold my needles together. I get my yarns out of the way a bit, and I'm bringing in the 4th needle. So I'm going to go behind here and go and knit into that first stitch. Now make sure that I'm using the ball end, not the cut end. So that's this one here. And I'm going to knit that first stitch. And then I like to knit the 2nd stitch and just give that a little bit of a tug to make sure that there's not a big loop or kind of a big line between the 2, or a big bit of yarn sitting there. So get that tension right. And then we just knit along. And we can kind of, once we get sorted, get ourselves set up, we can kind of ignore the other needles. I'm just going to move that a bit so it doesn't make that noise. So it's kind of like you're knitting with 2. And these other ones just hang about. Now when we get to the next needle change, the needle that we've been knitting with is now holding the stitches, and we pick up the other needle to start on the next side. Now we knit into that first stitch there, and off we go again, and again knit the 2nd, hold the 2nd stitch, hold the needle there, and then just give this a little tug to make sure that tension's not too loose. But don't really yank it, just a firm pull. Don't want it too tight either. And we keep going. We keep going like this, around and around. Okay, now the next cast on. Let's go to the Magic Loop. Okay, so Magic Loop method. What we've got here is a circular needle, and it's long enough to allow 2 loops on the side, which is what we need if we're going to knit with the Magic Loop. but I'll show you how that works and you can get an idea of what I mean by that. Okay, so we get all the stitches together on the cable and we halve them like that. Roughly half, it doesn't have to be perfect at all. Well, pull that out. So we've got a nice loop on that side. And then on this side, what we're looking for is we need some workability with these needles on that side, one in particular. So what we can do at this point is pull through. So look where the yarns are coming off. They're coming off this one. So we want to keep where the yarns are is where the cable's going to stay. But on this side, where there's no yarns, which is our first stitch that we cast on, we want to pull the needle through those stitches like that. Right, now we've got another loop that appears on this side. So those are 2 loops that you need when you're doing magic loop. Now the next thing you want to check is that you're not twisting your stitches. So just have a look and see that you've got your plait there going and that all your bases are in. Can you see that plait actually? I'm just going to hold up a little bit higher. There we go. And all the base of the stitches are in the centre like that, making a loop. And then we're going to stitch into that first stitch there. Now, we don't want to use that end because that's the cut end. We want to get rid of that and come around this side with the ball end. And we're going to knit that first stitch. Now the second stitch, we're going to knit. This time, we're not looking for it to be particularly tight or firm here. We want a little bit of slack so that we can get the stitch back onto the needles when they come round. Not a massive gap, just a little tiny bridge there. Okay, but off we go. We're going to knit all the way to the end of this needle. Get rid of all the stitches on there. Okay, so again we want to flip it round. This time again we don't want to look for where the yarn is. The yarn is on this one, so this needs to be a cable. So the yarn and the cable sit together, and then on the top you want the needles, the stitches going over the needle. So pull that over. I'm just checking that bridge that we made here, that kind of has worked pretty well. Okay, you might find that sometimes that stitch is too tight and you won't be able to get it over this bit. That means you're doing it too tightly. So again, we start here and do that first stitch just like normal. See, it's not too hard. So this is a great way for people like Audrey, they're younger, and kids who want to knit, for them to be able to go knit in the round. For things like mittens, because they don't have loads of needles to deal with. They've just got 2 needles and a cable. Much easier.